Welcome, the newest addition to our lineup of explosive anchors. A veteran broadcaster, a sports news anchor, race car driver, columnist, and reporter. Ira Panginiban and his program, Free Spits. Free Spits, a parody of free speech. A right we always abuse. Free Spits, freewheeling discussions, no holds barred. Free Spits, the real sentiments of the Filipino people. Free Spits and Ira Panginiban, Monday to Friday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Radio Bandito TV, Channel 224 Sky Cable, TV Plus boxes, GMA Afforda box, and all DTT boxes. Also heard on DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Also seen on Facebook /DZRJ 8:10 a.m. and YouTube channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido. Bangon na, tanghali na, RJ na.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJ TV. My name is Lecain. We're talking about interesting stories going on around the world this week, some of the stuff that happened this week, and one of the most interesting people in the world who is working with me here on the show today is Mr. Dan Kang. Now, Dan Kang, we always like to talk about Dan Kang because where in the world this week is Dan Kang?
Must be a small world if I'm the most interesting. I'm actually still in Korea. I was supposed to be in China, but
oh my goodness.
Apparently they had like a 6-day holiday for China, like Workers' Day or something, and the Chinese embassy was closed all week last week, so I could not secure my visa. So I was supposed to be in China at the Great Billiard Expo.
Well, I can't imagine.
I'm very bummed. I'm very bummed. But that's all right. All good. I'm
sure that the eventually the Chinese embassy will open again, and you will eventually be able to go into China. Now, I, on the other hand, I am in Manila today because I just traveled from the United States literally a few hours ago. One of the longest trips I have ever taken from the United States. I decided to do because of the way the flights were when I landed in Korea. There was no time to catch the connecting flight. So I took the next flight, which was 13 and a half hours later. And since it was also a holiday in Korea, which you told me about, there were no hotels that I was able to get. So I stayed in the transit lounge in the Korean airport. And I learned so much about the Korean airport. If anybody out there needs a question about the Korean airport, I can probably tell you anything you want to know because I was there for a very long time.
It's a beautiful airport.
It's a beautiful airport. It has the highest ceilings of any airport I've ever seen in my entire life. But yeah, I got to spend the night there in the Korean airport. Now, I have to say one thing about the Korean airport before we get started here. First thing, it is Incheon International Korean Airport. It is a nice airport. It's great for staying overnight because they have this thing called the Transit Lounge. Now, they have a hotel there, which I have stayed at before, but it was completely booked forever. Lady said, "Oh, there's no." I even went up there, and they had a sign out there that said, "Don't even bother. It's completely booked." So I stayed in the Transit Lounge, and they have a very nice Transit Lounge with all kinds of like desks you can sit at, and they have a sleeping room, and they have a shower room, and they have a lounge area. It was really nice. So I actually went into now there was a lot of people up in the lounge. So I went in the sleeping lounge, which has these little kind of beds. They're divided up around this big room. And while I was in the sleeping area, it's not dark, it's just low light, I found that there were two types of people in the sleeping area. People that there were constantly sounds emanating from their bodies. And then there was another type of people, the people that were talking on their cell phones a little too loudly. And since there was only 2 flights the next morning, one to either China or one to either the Philippines, So what I ascertained as I looked around at all the different people, that the people where the weird sounds kept emanating from them were Chinese, and the people that were talking on their phone a little too loud were Filipinos.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, because in Korea, Koreans it's kind of socially inept for them to actually talk on the phone in public places with crowd, like in the subways and buses. It's kind of a social no-no to talk on the phone, period, at all. It's kind of, yeah. I've been, me being from America, the first time, like riding in the subways and stuff, I used to get shushed all the time. Like I'd be talking on the phone, even though they, like some random Korean dude or lady would be like, shh, shh, shh. I'm like,
well,
oh, okay.
I can tell you that from belching and passing gas,
Now
Chinese people seem to have no problem. They have no problem with that. And talking loudly on the phone, Filipinos, no problem. No problem at all. And there were no Koreans there because we were in Korea. So it was only there was only 2 flights the next day. So that was my exciting time there in the Korean airport. But today I'm a little bit sleepy because that trip took me 40 hours to get from the United States. But I am so happy to be back in the wonderful Philippines, back in Manila. So I'm very happy to be back here.
I'll see you there next week.
All right, Dan will be back here next week, and hopefully, eventually, we will all be in the same country, in the same city at the same time very soon. Now, Dan, I thought we might get to the news here.
Yeah.
Now, there was something that I wanted to talk about this week before we actually get to the main news, and the reason that I want to talk about it is because I have been asked this question numerous times from many people, especially there in the Philippines. So I want to touch on it, and it has to do with a weird subject, the U.S. debt ceiling. Now, why would we be talking about that here on the Philippine World News Jam? But there are problems with the U.S. debt ceiling right now that could it affect the Philippines in some way? And that's what people are asking me. So what I thought is, here is the issue that we are facing right now. The U.S. has its bills to pay. We all have bills to pay. The problem is the U.S., like a lot of us, it spends more money than it makes. And it makes money, the United States makes money through taxes and selling military arms to other countries and selling, wheat and barley and cigarettes. Yeah, okay, that's what the U.S. does. That's how they make their money. So it's pretty much the same as it's been going on in the U.S. for 100 years. This all started actually back in 1917. The U.S. decided that if it doesn't have enough money, it will borrow money. However, there has to be a limit on how much that it can borrow and how much it can spend. And that limit, they call that the debt ceiling. And it borrows from other financial institutions. It borrows from other countries. And in the end, it all works out. Somehow the United States is always able to somehow pay its bills. But when it needs more money, as every year it does, every year it needs more money, it has to ask the Congress and the Senate to raise the debt ceiling. And this is a routine procedure. Congress has raised the debt ceiling 78 times since 1960, mostly under Republican presidents. But the U.S. government, somehow it always finds a way to pay its bills, and it does not default on its loans. The United States has never defaulted on its loans until now.
Who did they borrow that from? When we say loans, where do the loans come? I mean,
loans come from either financial institutions. They even come from places like other countries, like even China. The United States borrows from anybody that's got cash.
We have to explain that part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of money coming from all kinds of places. Mostly it's large financial institutions, but it's also from other countries. Huh? Yeah. I mean, that's. But what's happening now is the Republican Congress, the new Republican Congress, is trying to stop the Biden administration from raising the debt ceiling. And many of us, including me, believe that they are only doing this because they want to create a mess of the financial situation in the United States. Because if the United States default on its loans, which it has never done, and if this continues, it most certainly will default on its loan. The U.S. will basically shut down. The stock markets will spin out of control. The U.S. market financial rating will drop. Jobs will disappear. The U.S. will not be able to continue its military operations. Economists believe that 1/10 of the largest, the 1/10 of the world's largest economy, which is the United States, would completely shut down. Mm-hmm. Mortgage rates would skyrocket. Global financial stability would fall apart. Investors around the world would sell off their U.S. Treasury bonds, and the dollar would become weaker and weaker, which is a big problem. Now, why is that a big problem? Because more than half of the world's currency reserves are held in U.S. dollars, including one country, the Philippines. So, and the Philippines is heavily indebted. They hold a lot of debt in the Philippines. So how would places like the Philippines make interest payments? Of course, there's other countries that could step in and help, such as China? Maybe, China, which holds 3% of the world's currency reserves, while the U.S. holds 60%. But it would be a chance to tip that scale if the United States decided to default on its loans. So with this horrible future, a possibility, why does the U.S. just not raise the debt ceiling and borrow some more cash and then wait for another year and then work it out next year? So, Dan, the interesting thing is that since Donald Trump was president, there has been several people that have entered Congress, and I refer to them, as many do, as those MAGA crazies. And their goal is to bring down the Biden administration and return Trump to the White House. And this is the thing we were talking about months ago after the Republicans won the majority in Congress, and several Republicans refused to back Kevin McCarthy until he agreed to something. And well, we are now seeing what that something is, as he's being forced to agree to this to keep his speakership of the House. And the Trump Republicans there, they will gladly burn down the whole world's economy in order to get Trump reelected. So they are demanding these huge spending cuts against programs that the Biden administration will absolutely not cut. And they are going to hold the government hostage until their demands are met.
Conspiracy theories amok.
Yes.
So other countries are involved in that, right?
I mean, this is, people, we hear about, I was listening to the news the other day and I heard this thing about the U.S. debt ceiling again. Why do we keep talking about, what is this debt ceiling? You know what, this debt ceiling thing could be horrible to the world if the United States defaults on its loan.
I mean, the U.S. economy is, of course, worldwide affecting, as always. And interestingly enough, right now, the U.S. dollar is really high.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great right now.
This entire year, the beginning of the ending of last year up to now, it's. I think it reached a record high actually a few months ago. I know because I work with a lot of U.S. dollars here in Korea as well, because I work with the U.S. military. And it's just been unreal. And there was a time where we thought it was going to fall, but right now it's hugely strong again.
I mean, the peso hit 59 to the dollar. What was it? I don't know, 5 months ago. And now it's still 55. It's still 55, which is a high. That's right. I mean, that's a good solid.
It's 1.35 to the Korean won, which is unheard of.
I was in the. I was
actually kind of very good.
I mean, I was in the Korean airport for an entire 13 hours, and I ate 2 sandwiches and 2 drinks and a candy bar on $20. So that's pretty good for an airport.
That's in the Korean. That's in the airport.
That's in the airport.
I was at the San Francisco airport. I was at the San Francisco airport a month and a half ago, and a bottle of water was $10. Just a single bottle. And it wasn't even in plastic. It was in some kind of, I don't know what retort.
They just put your hands out and we'll put $5 worth of water in your hands and you can drink it.
It was a $10 bottle. I'm not even joking. It was a $10 bottle of water, and it was a small bottle. I was floored by that. I was like, oh my God. I mean, granted, it's at the airport. You expect it to be a little bit more expensive, but $10 for a bottle of water?
$10 for a bottle of water. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. But what else is insane is what the Republicans are asking the Biden administration to do. And they're asking for something to do and then know that the Biden administration is not going to do it. They're asking for 25% cuts across the board, except for military, on everything. And of course, I mean, that's ridiculous. Of course, the Biden administration is like, we're not ever going to do that. The Senate is never going to pass it. And they have till June to work this out. And the things that they're asking for, the IRS agents, this whole plan that Biden had to get the rich people to pay their taxes, which they haven't done in a while. And the student loan forgiveness and the securing the Medicaid and the Medicare for people and Social Security and all these things that the Biden administration has wanted to do. And the Republicans are going, cut it or we will default the government. And then it's like there's so many economists that are trying to figure out what is going to happen because this has never happened before. The United States has never defaulted on its loans before. And what would happen to the financial markets? And remember what happened to the financial markets in 2008 and what that did to the rest of the world. I mean, I was in the Philippines and I remember watching like all my investments in BBI all drop incredibly. And so a lot of people are, freaking out and deciding, hey, should I pull all my money out of the stock and out of the bank? And should I sell all my treasury bonds? And a lot of people are sitting on their hands, like getting really worried about this. Now, there's a way out of it if the Republicans will not, if they're fine just letting the entire world financial system burn, which is basically what they're doing, because most of the countries, like for instance, the Philippines, they keep their reserves in U.S. dollars. Of course they do. Most currencies are based on their currency versus the U.S. dollar. So there's this thing in the U.S. Constitution, the 14th Amendment, which states that the president could supersede Congress if this ever comes. This is a law that was made in 1861, and it's never been used. And people are thinking, they're like, is this going to work? Does anybody know if this is going to work? And nobody knows. So it's going to, if that happens, then there's going to be all kinds of lawsuits, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be screaming and yelling at the TikTok video cameras and everything. So there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff going on. But what I'm worried about is even if this comes to that point, what is the world looking at the United States, which if you're the world and you're looking at the United States, they're probably like, you know what, you guys can fix this easily. Just raise the debt ceiling, which is what like in the Trump administration did like several times. They just raised the debt ceiling. But because the Republicans are now in charge of Congress, they're threatening, hey, we're not going to do that. We're just going to let the Biden administration fall apart. And we don't care if it's going to just screw up the whole world.
When you talk about letting the world burn, that's not going to happen. And this is all just strategic, flexing. It's going to work. They're going to work something out. But as crazy as crazies are, they ain't that crazy.
Yeah, let me just tell you, some of the people in the Congress are crazy. Yeah. They are literally certifiably crazy.
Both sides, Republicans and Democrats, just Looney Tunes. Some of these guys are just. I don't know. There's a time where I couldn't even tell the difference between the two, and that's. I can
tell the difference.
I'm proud of that.
I can definitely tell the difference between MAGA Republicans and anybody else in Congress. Yeah. Some of these nut jobs that are in there now will just literally, they could care less. They want to get their TikTok. They want to get their face on TikTok. They want to get on the evening news. Anything they can do. And, a lot of before the Republicans would do this all the time. They would threaten that we're going to shut down and the government was shut down for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever. But they would never default on the debt ceiling. They would always come up a way. But this new group was in there now. I don't know, Dan. I'm a little worried. I'm like, this could go really bad. And I just,
Famous last words. How many times have we said that about both groups? I mean,
I know. I've never seen it get this close. I've never seen it come to the brink of disaster as close as it is now. And that's why a lot of Filipinos have been asking me about this question. Yeah. And I thought today we'd explain the debt ceiling a little bit and why it's so important that they raise the debt ceiling, because they can easily do it. They can do it in a day. But there's several Republicans like, we're never going to do it. We are never going to raise it. And we will just let this happen.
Yeah, Philippines is kind of, but and even in Philippine situation, that's of their own doing as well. I mean, putting themselves in that position too of being so dependent. It's been,
well, I mean, there are multiple countries. Your country, Korea, there is in the same boat. I mean, it's not like Korea has their reserves in another currency.
I'm a bit curious. I'll have to check that out and see what the Korean consensus is on that. But I'm sure the whole world is, on the edge. But you're going to get both sides as well. So
I mean, like I said, when this whole thing, if this happens and this falls apart, there's going to be somebody in there to help and scoop everybody out, and that's going to be China, as they want to get their currency. They want to get people dependent on their currency, just like Russia is now. Russia is trading in yuan; they're not trading in U.S. dollars anymore. So I know that the Chinese would love for the Philippines to start trading in yuan instead of U.S. dollars, or keeping their currency, their reserves, basically their reserves to pay their bills, their debts that they have throughout the world, basically based on U.S. currency. And the Chinese would love to change that. Yeah.
I remember reading somewhere that it was some kind of research done where they were saying that I think it was every 100 years or something, that money usually transfers from the east to the west and west to the east. I can't remember where I read that, but it was a bit interesting article on somebody that did some kind of study, historically, and that I can't remember if it was every 100 years or something, 200 years, something like that.
Countries do not carry, like 100 years ago, countries didn't carry debt like they carry now. Yeah. I mean, the debt that the United States have is what, like 20-some trillion dollars. It's an insane number that I can't even fathom.
You can't even fathom how much money that is.
I mean, imagine if you stacked $27 million like on top of each other. I mean, how big a stack that would be. I mean, I can't imagine how bad that be. And you hear all these conspiracy theories coming out. And I was reading one that someone sent me the other day, that the United States is going to go back to gold. They're going to go back to having the dollar equal to gold. Oh my God, that's never going to happen. Gold standard was 1930? Yeah, I mean, it's long. I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of months, the next couple of years? I don't think that is going to happen. But it's
coin too. How's that affect?
Yeah, I know. You get a chance to sell your cryptocurrency there, Dan. But speaking of other things that are on the brink of catastrophe, one of the things I wanted to quickly run over, since we're on the subject of the United States, which we always love to do our Trump news of the day, which I try and avoid, but I can't avoid it today because the Trump news this week is just so juicy. He's running for president because the United States cannot seem to find anybody better than Donald Trump to run for president.
Joe Biden.
Donald Trump will be running against Joe Biden. That is the best. That is the best that we have. The best we have to offer there in the United States. But
at least younger. I mean, can we get a younger Joe Biden and a younger Donald Trump, maybe? At least, if those are the only choices.
Yeah. Why don't we get the Biden kids and the Trump kids to run against each other? How funny? How hysterically funny would that be? But one of the things that good old Don Trump has to deal with this week, besides all the other issues that he have, is his rape trial is going on. And if you've been following this, it's coming to a close. We're eventually going to find out if, now this is not a criminal proceeding. This is a civil proceeding where the woman that Donald Trump allegedly raped in that fancy boutique in the United States back in the 90s, that she is suing him because he says that he didn't rape her, and she says that he did, and so she is suing him for defamation for lying about her. We've over the years we have talked about numerous occasions where Trump has been accused of sexual assault and been in all kinds of trouble for that. A number of 20, 30 times he's been in trouble for sexual assault. But he's always been able to get out of it, because when you come and you say something, Trump, he attacked me or something like that, Trump will sue you, and he will, say things about you, ruin your career, spend a lot of money, ruin you. So a lot of people were scared for a long time taking him to court, but those times have kind of changed now. And, women are a little less scared to stand up to a guy like Trump. So in this civil trial, Trump allegedly raped a woman in a dressing room and there at a fancy store there in Manhattan. And she was suing him because he says he never raped her. He said he didn't even know her. And he said if he did know her, he would never have sex with somebody as ugly as her. So now there are pictures that have come out of the two together. So, saying that he didn't know her is not going to wash too well. And then Trump said in court, he said he only marries the finest looking women. However, when he was asked about this woman in a picture, he said, "Oh, that's my ex-wife, Marla Maples." But it wasn't his ex-wife, Marla Maples. It was the woman. It was the woman that supposedly he raped. He made a mistake. So that whole thing about, well, I don't have sex with women that ugly, it doesn't really pan now, because he accidentally, because that woman, when she was younger, she was actually pretty good looking. She looked a lot like his ex-wife, Marla Maples. So what is the defense that Trump is going to use? And that's what we learned this week. The defense that he is going to use is no defense at all. His lawyers have given up. They are not going to have any defense. They're just going to give closing arguments and act like they don't care. That's his defense. He didn't even show up for the trial. He's going to act like, this is nothing. I don't even care about this. If I get found guilty of rape, I don't care. It's just meaningless to me. So that's the strategy. That's the strategy that they're using. And
so it's a civil case, though, is it not?
Civil case.
It's a civil case.
It's a civil case because too much time has passed. You can't get him for rape criminally.
Right.
So what happened during the trial? The trial was very fascinating. This woman who was a reporter, a fairly famous woman, was interviewing Donald Trump a long time ago, and he grabbed her and pushed her up against the wall, and he said, to her, by the way, we're going to have an affair. And it was starting to get a little rough, and then his butler bursted in the room and said, by the way, sir, you and your wife are supposed to have a photo shoot right now. You need to come with me. So, she got out of it, but she was scared at the time to say anything about this. So she came into court and she gave her story. And then they were able to play that tape in the trial, which Trump said, when you're famous, you can do anything with women. You can grab them and kiss them, and you can, grab them by their private parts, and they have to let you because you're famous, and I'm famous. So the case against Trump in this rape trial is really good.
Juicy, huh?
I don't think he's gonna win. And I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be running for the U.S. president who just got convicted of rape in a civil trial.
Well, he did. Yeah, if it's a civil trial, it's kind of strange that part of the justice system that you could actually lose that. They have something similar here too, where you could actually lose a criminal case. Really, it is a criminal, but you can't get prosecuted for that. Which is kind of that's a breakdown of the system.
O.J. Simpson won his criminal trial for murder, and then immediately was found guilty of in the civil trial for like $30 million.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, isn't it? But unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess, huh?
Yeah,
there's similar to that, and I had an experience like that here too, where I actually won the criminal trial, and the civil trial, actually, I lost that, but still got paid because I won the criminal trial. So it's kind of weird.
But this was not a rape trial, Dan.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay, no, but you're not telling us that you were in a rape trial.
Right. Yeah. No.
Okay.
It was a employment
Whew.
salary
Okay.
child. But what I'm
You don't
saying
have to,
is
you don't have
that
to tell us.
the difference between criminal and civil, whether it's rape, even murder, or anything else, is kind of it's there's a it's kind of odd the way that works. Yeah?
I
Is what
mean,
I'm saying. Yeah.
okay. One of them you're going to go to jail, and the other one you're going to have to pay money. Those are the differences between the two.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
the big
there's a
thing
difference,
is the big thing is that we have a guy in the United States
Yeah.
who's running
Yeah.
for president, who's the head
Yeah.
of the Republican Party, and he's in a civil trial right now,
Yeah.
fighting for having for him allegedly raping a woman in a
Yeah.
Manhattan boutique. So.
You know, we had a Korean president that was convicted of murder that got elected later on and became a president. So
I guess anything's
and that
possible.
had to do with civil and all of that as well. So that's kind of crazy.
I mean, honestly, to tell you the truth, when that recording came out where Trump said, because I'm famous, I can grab women by their genitals anytime I want. I thought when that came out, he was done, that there was no way that he was ever going to win the nominee for Republican to be president. And then he did. And then nobody cared. Nobody cared. They're like, we're conservatives, we're religious, right? But we don't care if a guy does that. I don't know. It's mind-boggling. But getting on with the news here, there was something very interesting that happened this week, and I want to talk to you about this, which involves homelessness, which is a subject that I've been very interested in around the world. And this, because this is a problem. This is a global problem, not only in the United States, but also here in the Philippines. It's a problem because, in my opinion, the world really has enough money to feed and house everyone. We just don't.
But
twice
over. Yeah.
I don't understand this at all. But what happened this week is just something I wanted to get your opinion on because. When we look at homeless people, we don't want to go near them. They're dirty and they smell and they usually have some kind of mental problem. And this was the case of this issue that happened in New York this week. This homeless man who dances for money. He dances to buy food. He's very known because he's the Michael Jackson. He always does Michael Jackson impersonations. He's down in the subway. And everybody seems to know this guy. He's got some videos up on YouTube. And he's always down there begging for money. And supposedly he went into a subway and he started yelling at passengers saying, he was hungry and he was tired. And so this ex-Marine, this passenger over there had enough of him. And so he grabbed him and put him in a chokehold. And two other passengers held on to the guy, held him down to the ground. And somebody, of course, filmed the whole thing on their iPhone. And they held him there for about 15 minutes. But when they finally let him go, he was dead.
Wow.
So, those UFC chokeholds, they put a guy in a chokehold and he's unconscious after 3 seconds. So you imagine holding on to that thing for 15 minutes, it cuts off all the blood going to the brain and eventually you pass out. But man, they held on to this guy. So, they ruled it a homicide.
Absolutely.
And, so, the big question now is because they let this guy go. They let him go. They took him in and they let him go. And so a lot of people are coming out and saying, why? Why did they let him go? He killed this guy.
Right.
And the question is, what should they do? Now, this is the same issue that I would say they had with the George Floyd thing, because you got a black guy and you got a white guy who kills him with a chokehold. Now, did this ex-Marine need to do that? Was this guy, did he have a weapon? Was he threatening to punch anybody? Now, according to the video, not really. He was just a guy who was yelling and, he was mentally ill. As it turns out now, I've kind of looked into this now, that this guy, his mother was brutally murdered when he was 14 years old, and he's been sent through the system. And he hasn't been the same, according to the people that knew him, since his mother was, brutally murdered there in New York. So, who failed this guy? Was it the city that's responsible for this mental guy, running around the streets, who is somewhat mentally disturbed and homeless? Or is it the fault of this Marine who decided, you know what, I've had enough of this, grabbed the guy, choked him out, killed him. And then the police took him in, but let him go. And so a lot of people are mad and protesting. They're saying, here we go again. This white guy, killed this black guy that was half his size. And so what should be the answer? What should we do?
So when they said they just let him go, there's no charges at all. They ruled it a homicide, but
the coroner ruled it a homicide. Now they don't know what to do yet. They have not charged him with anything yet. In fact, they wouldn't even release his name because they were, he's a white guy. We don't want to release his name because, but the problem was that the guy didn't have a weapon, and supposedly he was yelling at the people in the subway car, but he wasn't actually threatening to punch anybody. So, is this white guy, this ex-Marine, going to be held accountable for this? And some people saying that the city should be accountable for this because they have done nothing to help the homeless and they have done nothing to help the mentally ill that are wandering the streets of New York.
That's right. Well, I mean, this, I think the fear is that this could be a trend, a wave and a trend, and absolutely not. They can't let him go. I mean, somebody died, and this guy wasn't threatening anybody's life, so there was really no justification to even grab this guy. I mean, if you had enough, you call the police, you call an authority to remove him, whatever else. But you personally grabbing somebody right there, that's already a crime. You know what I mean? It's not a crime to yell at people.
He said he was defending the people in the subway car from a guy that he said was, he thought was a danger to the people in the subway car. Except, he didn't have a weapon. It's supposedly he was yelling and saying stuff to people, and but that happens. I lived in New York for 25 years. That happens all the time. That's a normal thing in the subway.
If I got in your face and started yelling at you and you hit me, I probably deserved it, but you still assaulted me.
Yeah.
Period. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think that this guy, and he came, his lawyers have already made a statement. He didn't mean to kill the guy. He had no idea that the guy was going to die. He didn't mean for it to happen. But I mean, this is the way it's different now than it was before. We all watch UFC. We know how to choke a person out now. We never knew this before. I mean, before all we had was, wrestling. And in wrestling, you can't do those moves. You can't run up and double kick a guy and then come down the ground. But now we know moves that we can do to break a guy's arm. Or to choke a guy out because we watch TV now. It's one of the things we learn. And so this guy knew how to do that, and he took it upon himself to do this. So I think, there's going to have to be some responsibility, and what people are saying now is, the
people that helped hold him down as well.
Yeah, when you watch the video, there's two guys on both sides of this guy holding his arms down, and there's another huge guy on top of him with his arm around his throat.
Yeah.
I mean,
listen,
I don't know.
I live by this brutal life ethos, and this ethos says that children make mistakes, they have accidents, they can be forgiven. As adults, we don't make mistakes and accidents. We make choices. That's it. It's very clear cut for me. If they want to rule that an accident, it's a choice. That Marine had a choice to either just be annoyed, wait for the guy to physically maybe threaten someone, but
if he had thrown a punch, or something, all right.
But whatever happened after he made that choice is not an accident. The man did not die by an accident. As we know now, it was ruled a homicide.
Yeah,
he has to have some responsibility. If it wasn't intended, doesn't matter. I don't intend to run over a kid that ran out in the street, but if I do, I did.
Yeah.
There's no.
Speaking of people that do intend to kill people, and this is something I also wanted to get to today, because I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because there was a school shooting last week. In fact, there were two mass shootings last week, one on Wednesday, which 9 were killed, and a 13-year-old boy was the one. He used his father's gun to kill 8 other students and a guard. And then there was another man that shot a whole bunch of people, and he was wearing a Generation 88 shirt, which I didn't know what that meant, but it turns out that is the Heil Hitler shirt because the H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. And he killed 8 people and wounded 14. But here is what is interesting about, because, I don't talk about the shootings that happen that much because there's just too many of them. So I only talk about it every once in a while. But this one is a little weird in a way because this didn't happen in the U.S. This happened in Serbia. In Serbia, they had 2 mass shootings within a day of each other. And one of them was a school shooting. Now, usually we only hear about these in the United States. So I found it fascinating that this happened in, of all places, Serbia. Now, in case you don't know, Serbia is like a war-torn place, and they're used to, killing, each other all the time, but they kill the enemy. They don't kill each other. And this is the first time that they have had any kind of shooting like this in Serbia in a long time. And so, but what I found fascinating about this was what happened after this killing. Literally happened yesterday, because the killings happened just last week. The president of Serbia came out and said, okay, that's it. These 2 monsters, the young monster and the old monster, will never see the light of day. And I'm taking all the guns away. But this is not going to happen again. And so there is no way you can get a gun license now in Serbia as of today.
Wow.
I mean, they did this in one day. So I just, I'm worried sometimes that the things that are going on in the United States are being spread throughout the world. And I hear these things that's happened in New Zealand. Now, is it because of the United States? I can't say that for sure, but what this happened in New Zealand where they had the mass shooting, and what happened in New Zealand, they took all the guns away. And then in Serbia, this happens. And then like a day later, he makes a law that says nobody can buy a gun now. And we're going to start taking, because there's so many guns in Serbia, because when the war stopped, there was there was guns everywhere. So it's just interesting that's the case there, that they had this mass shooting there in Serbia, and this is how fast that they dealt with it. The United States has been having mass shootings forever, and they still can't do anything about it.
Well, I mean, I don't think Serbia has, hundreds of years of constitution that allows the citizens to bear arms, and they don't enjoy the kind of freedom that they have in the United States. And so, I mean, the U.S. gun law, the U.S. It's just too long. It's too late. You can't.
I know.
Take the guns
in the United States, it's just too many guns. And we're having a little.
It's never going to happen.
Audio problems. But yeah, I mean, as far as what's going right now, people look at places like Serbia and they go, "Wow, that was very fast. How they were able to deal with that." Why can't they do that in the United States? And they can't. They can't do it. Just like you said, it's impossible at this point to do something like this in the United States.
And then what you're saying is the U.S. A major factor in inspiring other people in other countries to do those things, and I think that also comes, whether it's the United States or not. I think that comes from the spread of information now, and us being able to be, influenced by connection and communication, the internet, the world seeing everything, those kind of things that we, 20, 30 years ago never had access to.
Yeah,
seeing
I
that.
I know. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Have a word called, in 30 years ago, did we ever have the word called influencers?
I know. And now influencers are everywhere.
Like,
they're all over the place.
right.
We're always being influenced by influencers. Which actually reminds me. Which reminds me of another. It's like another great story that happened recently. Is Bud Light had an influencer, a gay trans influencer, make a video to sell their beer. And what happened to Bud Light? Now there's a massive push for people not to drink Bud Light because this trans guy drank Bud Light on a TikTok video, and now they're. And so, Bud Light, first thing, they get all the crazy conservatives or Republicans out there saying, we're never going to, and then Kid Rock, shooting Bud Light with a machine gun on TikTok. And now Bud Light, so they come out with a new video in the past, what was it, last week, where it shows, horses running, and it's a very Americano. It's, shows firemen and police officers. And so now all the other people also now hate Bud Light. So everybody hates Bud Light now because they don't know because all the influencers. But speaking of influencers, and I want to get to this one subject before we run out of time here. And that is in the Philippines, we watch a lot of Netflix. Oh, love watching Netflix here in the Philippines. But there may be a problem very soon because of there's a writer's strike going on right now. This is a big issue there in the United States. People who write those shows and movies have gone on strike. Sure. Because they want to know what is the value of a writer, and what is my value? What is my value? And so some people say, these actors that get paid millions and millions of dollars, but what about the writers? And so the writers are like, all right, well, we're going to make a stand right now, and this is really big because they've had to shut down productions on all kinds of things because of this writer strike. And a lot of it has to do, Dan, with, before writers have a television show, they get a television show, they have like 22 episodes. So they have a season. They have a season sure. And they can make money during the season. And they have a movie that comes out and they release it in the theater. And it's a big blockbuster movie. But now sure. Everything is streamed. So the people that are the production houses are like, why do we need to pay a lot of writers for 20? We could just pay them once,
right?
and the thing's going to stream anyway. Right. So the writers are like, okay, all right, we need to take a step back here, and so they're striking right now.
I mean, that's a big issue in Hollywood too with actors. I mean, they have to have rights for when the movies hit the streaming networks. Before they only got paid for the movies, right? Hitting the big screen, but now contractually they have to get paid percentage of when it hits, Netflix or HBO and all of that.
Things are changing. Things are changing.
There's a lot more money. Yeah, and the guys that were making a wild hog out of that, they were like, yeah. And now they're like, oh shoot, now they got onto us. Now we got to share some of this that we've been making all this money on, right? Extra though.
I mean, people don't watch TV. People don't watch TV. People don't go to the movies anymore because why would you when you can sit at home in your underwear and watch the movie and all the TV shows in one night? So I understand this. And the other issue too, Dan, is AI is out there and the writers they want some protection to make sure that movie houses don't just start using AI to write the scripts and to write the stories.
Sure, we had that conversation already too, right?
I know we had that. We talked about that last week.
Sure, we can have AI just to watch the movies for us too.
but the interesting thing about that, I have to say, AI has to have a sample. They have to have something to learn from. So they have to go through and look at other shows. So all they're going to be doing is copying. They're just copying. They can't come up with a new idea, pretty much. So I think there's a limitation with the AI. But I mean, it's how much of the company's going to care if they're having to pay a bunch of writers millions of dollars. Like, wait a minute, we can just use, Chat GPT when the next one comes out, like for nothing. So why don't we just do that? And so the writers are taking a strike, and they want to have, they want some kind of thing that says that they have some kind of job security.
Underappreciated, undervalued, and underpaid. And, I mean, sure. It's just like when McDonald's came out with the touchscreen, right, ordering, and then everybody was like, "Oh,
hey, we only have to hire one person behind the counter."
Nobody lost their jobs. So.
That is an interesting point, Dan, because I noticed like in when they redid the McDonald's out here, where they used to have 6 cash registers, and now they only have 1. And they've got 5 of those little things that you have to come in and stick the, point to what you want. Everybody, hey, that's interesting. That's fascinating idea. How we can get rid of, because eventually we're all just going to sit home and order and stream our movies and get our food and never have to leave.
Here in Korea, I did this post about, we have actual supermarket or mini mart stores where there's nobody working there. It's 24 hours. You walk in, you scan your bank card, it opens up. You buy everything, and you just scan everything, and then you pay and you leave. You bag your own things, and this is a norm in every community here in Korea. And
that doesn't have theft written all over it.
Yeah, but they don't here. There's no theft here in that. It's weird, huh?
Yeah, that is weird.
There's random theft, and then what happens? You know what happens when you have random theft? The camera gets you, and then you get plastered all over.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Plastered everywhere, and you become like this, you're a social outcast.
Now you're an influencer. Now everybody knows who you are.
Exactly.
Which speaking of this is another something I wanted to run by you. Speaking of famous Asians, they did a survey in the United States, and they do these surveys every so often. I think the Asian American Alliance, they do this, and they asked Americans, can you name an Asian American? Can you name a famous Asian American? And I just wanted to say this because the number of people that can name a famous Asian American has dropped. It's now only 1 in 4 people can name an Asian American. This was released on Tuesday. The Asian American Foundation found that when they asked, most of the respondents were like, I don't know, Jackie Chan. And they were like, Jackie Chan is not an American. And then
is there even a question of what Asian is? People don't know that Filipinos are Asian. They're like, those island guys.
The second most popular answer was Bruce Lee. And the next answer, you're going to love the next answer. The most, name an Asian American, Kamala Harris. That was the next one. But most people could not answer anybody. And they found that of the 20 names, the top names that people asked, Southeast Asian was not in there anywhere. So I just found this fascinating. And these things are big surveys. 5,235 people were surveyed. And they asked, please name a Pacific Islander or an Asian American. And the number 1 answer was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And the second one was Don Ho. And the third one, the third people that Americans said famous was Jason Momoa, the guy from Aquaman. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right. But I just found that interesting.
The age disparities here. Don Ho, wow. I'm surprised they didn't say Jack Lord from Hawaii Five-0.
And they were asking, what do you think Asians do? And the answer in the entertainment industry, and the answers were, for men, the number 1 was kung fu, martial arts, and for women, geishas. That's what they thought. Yeah, geishas was the number 1 answer for what Asian women do.
You know what they would have been in our era? Math. They do math.
They do math. They're just smart. So, but anyway, I thought that was fascinating about this the survey they did, that most Americans have no idea. They have no idea about Asian culture, what Asians are doing, famous Asian people. They can't name anybody except Don Ho. And Bruce Lee.
There's an age disparity there because there's no young people that know who Don Ho is.
I thought that was hilarious when I heard that. But speaking of famous people, that people are like not happy or don't say. This week, King Charles was coronated.
Oh
Prince
God.
Charles was made king. They put the crown on his head this week, and a lot of people were not very happy about that. A lot of people, quietly applaud, but a lot of people were yelling, "Down with the crown" and "Not my king," as the monarchs were pulling up.
Right?
There was a lot of arrests. There was a lot of arrests this week in England as they tried to coronate this thing. And one of the things that I thought was just gold about the coronation is these pranksters went out to one of the most this thing's called the perfect lawn. It's where and somebody snuck out there, and they don't know how they were able to get past the guards and do this. And they took either a lawnmower or some clippers, and they made and I don't know if I can say this, they made a giant penis on the lawn there for the new coronation. So people are wondering how much longer the royal family will be around. That's because funny. People are, not so happy with, they love the queen, but now that the queen is dead, they're not so thrilled about Charles.
It's strange. It's kind of odd because the whole monarchy is kind of odd, I guess.
It is kind of odd.
There we're trying to offend a bunch of English people, but
I know. I don't want to offend the English.
There's a lot of memes going on.
But if you think, when they put the crown on the Queen's head, we're all like, okay, yes, but now they're putting the crown on Prince Charles's head, and now he's King Charles. It's a little weird. It's a little weird now. Before I understood it, but now it's a little strange that we even still have a monarchy in Britain, and that they are still, the king of Australia and the king of Canada. The whole thing is just a little weird.
A monarchy. It's kind of odd that with our, societal evolution in first world countries that we would actually even have a monarchy. It's kind of odd.
I know. It's kind of weird.
There's memes going on everywhere. People, there are people clapping a guy in a golden carriage and they can barely buy food for their house, stuff like that. And there's just memes going everywhere. It's just, the idea of calling somebody my king, it's kind of odd.
It's kind of weird. So I guess that's why they decided to take a lawnmower and make a giant male member there in the lawn, the most perfect lawn, as they called it, for the coronation.
It's even more odd. The queens are okay, but kings are not. That's crazy too.
I don't know what. Speaking of, but kings and queens, they're going to have to get out of here because we're out of time. Dan here on the World News Jam, but we'll be back. Me and Dan will be back next week to talk about more interesting stories going on around the world outside the Philippines. So everybody, please tune in here on DZRJ and RJTV for the World News Jam. I am Eric Lecain along with Dan Kang, and we'll be here next week talking about those stories. So please tune in and be safe out there. We'll see you next week.